The movie Star Trek First Contact is probably one of the most beloved and equally highly criticized movies in the Trek franchise. The average audience member of First Contact will find it entertaining and generally can enjoy the Trek for Trek's sake. However, those of us who are more focused on the continuity and minutiae will find some points pretty annoying, though ultimately love it for what it is. It is important to understand how canon and continuity are important to the story, how much their aspects can improve the works overall. Honestly, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone in the fandom who has done in-depth research and not come out loving Trek more because of it, unless you subscribe to Renegade Cut. It has been proven in a sterilized scientific situation that you're on par with Hitler if you like Renegade Cuts, or at least listen to some of their videos. Unlike other reviews, this will ultimately be a scene-by-scene breakdown discussing the lore and any neat cinematography or behind-the-scenes info that I think will increase your appreciation of the mythos. The beginning of the movie is a bit boring. Gotta get those above-the-line credits in before we can enjoy this, you understand. When the film actually starts, post telling us people most don't know nor care about, save for the actors that we recognize, we are introduced to a really clever way of catching everyone up to speed. While it doesn't work the greatest for people who have never seen The Next Generation, and specifically Best of Both Worlds, the initial scenes of the Borg cube tell us about the enemy and what the antagonist will be like the entire time. They are a devastatingly scary enemy, one that is alien to us and seems out of a horror story. For most people, this will just be a reminder of the Borg and that they assimilated Picard. But it also showcases what the Borg will look like when people have a movie budget. The absolute horrors of the cybernetic beasts are put on display here. Who and what they are, that they operate on you, turn you into something not you, is prevalent. A really cool effect that we'll see used a few times is the Dutch angle. As the camera explores the Borg cube, taking us to where they are operating on Picard, it shifts from right to left with the camera dipping and weaving. The camera moving like this tells us something is wrong with the place, and both the speed and blurring effects are meant to make us uneasy. It then leads us to a man being operated on against his will, the main hero. This lovely scene of fun and frivolity is interrupted when the captain is startled. It appears that Picard was having a daydream, and he's donning a new uniform nonetheless. We'll get into that in a bit. However, this was another fake out as a Borg implant jumps out of his cheek and he is actually awoken into the real world. The captain is awakened by a Priority 1 message. The communication is from an admiral telling them that a colony named Ybor Prime has been destroyed, and they finally are about to go face to face with another Borg cube. After this, we get our first view of the Sovereign-class vessel, one of the most beautiful ships in the fleet.
Captain's log, Stardate 50893.5. The moment I have dreaded for nearly 6 years has finally arrived. The Borg, our most lethal enemy, have begun an invasion of the Federation. And this time, there may be no stopping them.
Again, I'm going to postpone talking about the Sovereign for a little while, but more on that when it's appropriate. Let's move on. Picard discusses how the Borg have returned, and now there may be no stopping them. He has a meeting of the senior staff advising them of the incoming Borg threat. The crew immediately begins breaking down what preparations it'll take to intercept the Borg. Picard stops them and advises that they have been benched and will be ensuring that the Romulans don't decide to take advantage of the situation. While I do think the Romulans taking advantage of a weakened enemy is within their wheelhouse, dialogue, and indeed current events of the universe overall, indicate that they wouldn't take this step. When challenged by Riker, the captain states that the Enterprise is not allowed into the battle because of Picard's post-traumatic stress disorder. Many have pointed out how stupid this is. There are a ton of ways around the problem, including having Riker take command for the battle. However, I think I have a better explanation, and I'm going to need Renegade Cuts to sit down because I'm about to show you why canon and continuity matter. And you may want to find a safe space after this one, buddy, but don't worry, I'm sure one will be available. It makes absolutely no sense that an entire ship is put on the back burner because of one man, especially the most advanced vessel the Federation has. However, let's break down universe events and have this in context. The Borg attack is at the height of the Dominion Cold War. In fact, Starfleet will mine the wormhole and full-scale war will be a reality with the Dominion in only a few months. This is why we see a more militant Starfleet. The uniforms are now mainly gray, with the undershirt reflecting the department, making it harder to determine who they are. I know there are better ways to do that, but this is Starfleet, so we're just going to have to go with it. The Sovereign is an absolutely beautiful and terrifying ship of exploration and devastation. We'll talk about it more at the Battle of Sector 001, but it's at least worth noting here. The way Starfleet officers move, the placement of consoles, this is a return to the original series mentality. An exploration first, but ready to destroy anything that slights you if need be. I fully believe that while the Borg may have put Starfleet on the right track for defense, the Dominion forced them into overdrive. At this point, Starfleet knew a conflict was coming and was pumping out new ships and designs like they were candy. But this was due to the Dominion threat, not the Borg one. The Borg may have inspired these designs, but they didn't push Starfleet as much as the Dominion had at this point. So why sideline the Enterprise E? Well, it's likely that Starfleet knew that a war with the Dominion was inevitable, and there was no point in defeating the Borg only to be under the banner of the Dominion. At least some might argue that. So while it was a risk, they likely kept several key players out of the game as aces in the hole to ensure that there were others around to defend the flag when the Dominion attacks, if Starfleet is crippled after defeating the Borg. This also may be why we don't see Sisko and most of the main crew on the Defiant, but again, we'll discuss that later. It is quite possible that the proto-Starfleet officer that is Picard might not accept that they are going to be keeping him out of the game due to a war that was inevitable, so they gave him another BS answer. Now, the pragmatic thing to do is to try to level with Picard, but he is anything but pragmatic. This person who is better than the sum of his parts, this proto-Starfleet officer, this enlightened human being, would not be okay standing back because he was needed for a war. I honestly think that it would be within canon for them not to tell him the truth. I don't know that he would accept it. It is possible that they did level with him. They said that the Enterprise would be needed for the upcoming war, as well as telling him the truth that he was an unstable element and that's what he focused on. Now, while I'll agree the excuse given to Picard by Starfleet is a bit weak, everything else fits into place. It makes it so much better, and honestly, we couldn't have gotten here without canon and continuity. And this, dearest Renegade Cuts, is why continuity matters, and how you can insult someone only a few times versus trying to make it a dramatic theme of your video. You're welcome for the lesson, anyway. The next scene has Picard drowning himself in music, and I'm going to be honest, I don't like this scene. It makes me less inclined to really break it down or enjoy it. I'll link a video of Kowalski's where he goes into intricate detail about it, but beyond that, I'm going to note a few things. I might one day do a scene analysis of my own, but for now, I'm just going to give some high-level information. The important part here is that the music is almost unbearably loud. This is to signify that Picard is drowning out the pain he's going through, as well as possibly the information he is receiving from the Borg. We also see his reflection in the window with a song from an epic depicting a man who is homesick. I'm honestly obliged to agree with Kowalski that this is portraying the duality of Picard, how the Borg took something away from him, an innocence that he once had. He's never going to be the same. So while many think that this might be a reference to Earth, I honestly think this is a reference to TNG pre-Borg Picard. During this time, Riker would come in and they'd have a brief conversation. After that interaction, our heroes get their call to action.
Bridge to Captain Picard.
Go ahead.
We've just received word from the fleet. They've engaged the Borg.
The music, the dialogue, the serious tone of the actors shows a wonderful and fully immersive scene here. Before we even get to the camera tricks, you feel how important all of this is, how vital and how necessary it is for the Enterprise to be at that battle. I've discussed this before, but I also find the tactics of Starfleet here pretty interesting and a lot better than the Battle of Wolf 359.
Stand by to engage at grid A15.
Defiant and Bozeman, fall back to mobile position 1. Acknowledged.
We have an invisible range. A Borg cube on course 0, Mark 215. Speed warp 9.
We are the Borg. Lower your shields and surrender your ships. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to service us. Resistance is futile.
All units, open fire. Remodulate shield protect.
They've broken through the defense perimeter. To order. Pursuit force.
Cube is changing course. 0, 2, 1, mark, 4.
Defiant, continue to attack. Flag to Starfleet Command. We need reinforcements.
Casualty report coming in. 96 dead, 22 wounded on the Lexington.
When they tune in to see how the battle is going, the first thing that is presented is that the Define and Bozeman are to fall back to mobile position 1. The fact that they call it mobile and it has a standard number versus fall back to the front line or something similar makes me believe that Starfleet has set up several defensive lines, each one attempting to cause more damage or disable the Borg. The hope may be to damage it by attrition. This actually isn't a horrible idea. We see that it did work to some degree because the Borg cube is damaged at the Battle of Sector 001, and it's not instantly healing itself. However, all of this planning, all of the tactics, aren't good enough. As soon as the Borg engages the fleet, it is pandemonium with Starfleet taking incredible losses. Let me back up a minute though and talk about some of the cinematography. I do love the way the Borg are portrayed. Again, the use of movement and the Dutch angles as we hear the Borg give their terrifying warning. It shows the threat of the Borg and even how on the Enterprise, which is 3 hours away from all of this battle, we aren't safe. And finally, after the call to action, our hero answers the call.
I'm about to commit a direct violation of our orders. Any of you who wish to object should do so now. It will be noted in my log.
With a spiffy speech and Data saying, hell yeah, let's do it. Again, the pessimist in me doesn't allow me to enjoy the scene, but the USS Enterprise E going to face the Borg is amazing. Let's do this.
Red alert! All hands to battle stations. Engage.
Hey guys, I'll be trying something a bit new. If you haven't, go ahead and follow me at twitch.tv/lorereloaded. I'm not sure of the schedule yet, but this is where I'll be doing the edits for the movie. So if you want to come and chill while I try to break this movie down, definitely make sure you're following me there. Shout out to Tyzzara who funded this whole thing, and I'll see you guys on the next Lore Reloaded.